Arataki Itto is a brand new Geo Claymore user coming to us here in Genshin Impact, and he's taken the community by storm. He's pretty simple, but also very strong and a ton of fun, so I'm very excited to bring you guys a build guide today. Hi, my name's Blossums, and welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and today we're going to be going over an Arataki Itto build, talking about what's going to be best on him weapon and artifact-wise, as well as giving you some different alternatives. We're also going to be going over some different team comps, the way he plays, some of his strengths and weaknesses, as well as doing a whole showcase. So we've got a lot to cover, but before we do, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, as it helps me out a ton and I deeply appreciate it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and check out Arataki Itto. Arataki Itto is a strong Geo main DPS who likes to be on the field quite a bit. His playstyle, thankfully though, is quite simple. Most of the time you're going to be normal attacking and charge attacking as much as you can and throwing Ushi, his elemental skill, whenever you get the chance. So first up, let's go over these talents. So starting off with his normal and charge attack, which is where he just operates in general as doing normal and charge attacks. He has a normal attack combo of 4 consecutive strikes, and on the second and fourth hits, he gains a stack of superlative strength. And this is what Arataki Itto mainly revolves around. You can gain 5 max stacks of superlative strength there, and these stacks can be consumed by the charge attack to unleash a charge attack combo that varies in length based on your superlative stacks number, and then it finishes with like a ground pound on the ground. If you have 0 superlative strength, it just does this lame kind of spin charge attack that's not very effective and feels just pretty bad. But that is mostly what he's going to be working off of, is doing these normal attacks, getting those superlative strength stacks, and then using your charge attack combo as much as possible to deal really strong damage. And you can see here that this stuff starts to scale pretty well. He has pretty good modifiers on his general normal attacks, but then as you go along into the actual charge attack combos and the final hit, there, you're going to be dealing some massive damage. And the superlative strength stack duration is fairly long at 60 seconds, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. Not to mention that in this as well, Arataki Itto has the unique ability that his normal attack combo does not immediately get reset after sprinting or using his elemental skill. So if you do 1, 2, 3 of his normal attack, you can sprint real quick and follow up with the 4th to get your next superlative stack. It's very easy and very nice feeling. Like it really makes him like so much better. If he didn't have that, I think he'd be a much clunkier character because the stacks would be harder to get, but because he has that, it's so nice, and he deals such good damage with some of these modifiers. As for Arataki Itto's elemental skill, he hurls Ushi, the bull, at the enemy and deals geo damage, and boy does it deal some geo damage. Ushi does hurt. He does a lot of damage. But not only that, but whenever Ushi hits opponents, Arataki Itto gains 1 stack of superlative strength, so that's adding to your combo as well as just dealing really good damage. And then not only that, Ushi taunts surrounding opponents and draws their attention. He gets his HP based off of Arataki Itto, and then when Ushi takes damage, you gain a stack of superlative strength. And you can only gain 1 stack every 2 seconds, but it's still a free stack every now and then he flees whenever his HP reaches 0, and Arataki Itto gains 1 stack of superlative strength when he leaves as well. So Ushi is not only taunting, dealing a ton of damage, but he's also just feeding your stacks of superlative strength to keep you doing your charge attacks as much as humanly possible, which is really cool. You can also hold him to adjust his throwing angle and aim him a little bit better. He's also considered a Geo construct, so you can pair him with characters like Zhongli and whatnot, and but you can only deploy 1 Ushi at a time, so you can't go around and toss multiple Ushis and gain a bunch of stacks, but he is still very strong and super worth. He only lasts for 6 seconds with a 10-second cooldown, but each of those 10 seconds when Ushi comes onto the field, you feel it because he deals some serious damage. I'm not joking. Without a Bennett circle, I've gotten Ushi to deal about 40,000. I don't even want to know how much damage he does in a Bennett circle. I mean, we can find out in the showcase. Then as for the elemental burst, it just adds to this kit even more. It converts Itto's normal charge and plunging attacks to geo damage. It increases Itto's normal attack speed. It also increases his attack based on his defense, kind of like Noelle, and it is a ton of attack increase, so he's going to be a heavily defense focused character. And then on hit, the first and third strikes of his attack combo will each grant Arataki Itto 1 stack of superlative strength. So if you were paying attention earlier, yes, that means on every attack in his combo now, while he's in his elemental burst, he'll be gaining a stack of superlative strength. It also decreases his elemental and physical resistance by 20%, but honestly, I haven't really felt that while using Itto. He just kind of tanks everything in general. I haven't had Itto really go to low. Maybe I'm just pairing him with too good of healers or something, but this whole elemental and physical res decrease hasn't really affected me at all, it feels like. But as you can see, the attack bonus you gain here from his elemental burst is huge at 92.2%. He gains that small attack speed bonus of 10%, and that ramps up with one of his passives we'll talk about. It has a duration of 11 seconds, which is pretty decent, and a cooldown of 18 seconds, so you're gonna have like a 7-second cooldown time there, which is fine, because then that's just a free opportunity to go to your other characters, do their stuff, and then come back to Itto to, you know, use his elemental burst once again and deal a bunch of damage. And it has an energy cost of 70, which is relatively high, but for the most part, Ushi does generate some really solid particles, and I haven't had too much of a problem keeping my Itto's elemental burst up. Moving on towards his passives, we have Arataki Ichiban, and basically whenever you use his charge attack combo, you gain attack speed of 10%, max of 30%, and an increase of resistance to interruption. And this increase to resistance of interruption is not a joke. I have not had Arataki Itto interrupted during his charge attack combos. He just ignores whatever damage he's being dealt and goes along with his combo. It's really nice to not get interrupted. And then as for the next passive talent, the Arataki Kesaragi damage is increased by 35% of Arataki Itto's defense. And if you weren't keeping up before, that's his charge attack combo whenever you have the superlative strength there, so you're getting even more damage from the defense scaling. So yeah, he's going to be a big defense scaling character, gaining a ton of attack from it and having the damage on his charge attack scale based off of it. He's really strong, and you'll see just how hard he hits in a moment. So the next passive, we have Bloodline of the Crimson Oni, and basically Arataki Kesaragi damage is increased by 35% of Arataki Itto's defense. And if you weren't paying attention earlier, basically that just means it's his combo for his charge attacks whenever you have the superlative strength stack. So whenever you're doing that, it's going to also be scaling off of your defense, which is really good. So when you're in his elemental burst, you're not only getting a huge attack bonus, but the damage you're dealing with the charge attacks is going to be scaling by 35% of your defense. So it's no joke. He loves defense and does a ton of damage with a good defense build. I did want to comment a little bit about his kit, just talk about his playstyle a little bit, and he does like to be on the field a lot, I will say. He doesn't necessarily need to be, though. As we established before, his stacks of superlative strength do last a while, and they don't go away if he goes off of the field. Not to mention that Ushi is also a taunt, which is pretty nice. So you can just kind of toss Ushi and then go to your other characters and do stuff. So even though he does like to be on the field a ton to deal his charge attacks, and doing those charge attacks can take a little bit and, you know, keep him on the field for a good duration, he doesn't necessarily need to be on the field at all times or anything for you to get the most out of him. He only really needs to be on the field to do his elemental burst and throw Ushi whenever he can to deal a bunch of damage. And while he's doing those charge attacks, he seems to move around a lot. So if you're trying to pair a good healer with him, although I haven't had any issues with characters like Kokomi, other characters like Chi-Chi actually might be a pretty good option just because of the fact that her healing follows him. Other characters like Barbara also might not be bad, but some of the characters that require you to stay in a circle might not be the best for Itto just because he does move around a lot when he's doing his charge attack slashes. But as I said, I really haven't had that much of a problem with it. But if you are finding that problem, then that might be a good solution for you, is to have a character whose healing can follow you like Barbara or Chi-Chi. Alright, in the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to be talking about some of the artifact sets here, and without a doubt the Husk of Opulent Dreams is going to be the best on Arataki Itto. You get free geo damage, you get free defense percent, and you get even more defense percent on the two-piece. It's everything he wants and more, and it also benefits from him you know, being on the field or off the field, which is really nice, because as I said, you don't necessarily have to have him on the field all the time. You can just kind of toss Ushi and do stuff with other characters until you have his burst, and then come back with him and deal a bunch of damage with his burst, and you'll be keeping these 4 stacks of the Husk of Opulent Dreams up at all times. But this isn't the only set you have to use on him. He actually does have some pretty good alternatives, namely the Retracing Bolide. The Retracing Bolide is actually really solid because you're going to be generating a bunch of crystallized shields anyway, so your shield strength is going to be increased by 35%, then your normal and charge attack damage is going to be increased by 40%, which is really nice. And if you just don't have a good Husk set yet, and you already have a good Retracing Bullide set, then this is going to be an excellent set for Arataki Itto to use until you can get a good Husk set. Now, you don't even have to use that if you don't want to. Say you have a couple of Husks pieces though, you just don't have a full set, you can easily still use the 2-piece of this and then run like a 2-piece of like Gladiator or something if you really wanted to, or you know, the Shimenawa's Reminiscence. But mostly I think the Husk of Opulent Dreams is pretty necessary because that defense percent is really nice on him and scales really well with his damage. The main stats you're going to be looking for on Arataki Itto are going to be defense percent, geo damage bonus, and crit rate or crit damage, whatever is going to get you that best ratio. And if you don't have a crit rate or crit damage headpiece, then defense percent is going to be a solid option here. But you are going to want a crit rate or crit damage piece at one point or another. But I do understand Artifact Luck is rough. So if you need that alternative, defense isn't too bad here. Definitely don't do attack percent here. It's just not worth it on Itto. His base attack isn't really that high, so it doesn't even scale that well if you do have an attack percent, but his base defense is very high, so even if you have a bad defense piece, it's going to be better than a pretty good attack piece. So just keep that in mind. And also he's just gains way more attack in his elemental burst from having a defense sans than he could ever get from an attack percent sans. So defense sans is just the way to go. Geo damage is just the way to go. Defense can't really replace this that well either. And of course, if you don't have a geo damage bonus goblet, you could do defense here as well, but you will want to replace it with geo damage whenever you can. However, these are going to be the best main stats for you. They're pretty locked in on Arataki Itto. And then as for the main stats, you're going to, of course, want things like crit rate and crit damage. Those are going to be the most valuable to you. And then you're going to want to care about energy recharge because he does have a 70 cost burst. And although Ushi does produce some solid particles, you do still need a little bit of energy recharge substats. Trying to bring Arataki Itto to the 130 range is a good mark to hit. 140 even better. So having the substats on the energy recharge there is very nice. And then you can start to look for things like defense percent on your substats as a nice cherry on top. Of course, attack percent isn't the end of the world either, but it's not going to help him out nearly as much as the other substats I just mentioned. And then for this video, I'll briefly go over each and every one of my artifacts so you know exactly what I'm using for this video, and then we'll move on to the weapons. As for weapons for Itto, you'll be happy to know there is a good weapon for him at every level, whether you're free to play, low spender, or high spender, and they're all about the same in terms of power level. So a lot of those options are going to be Serpent Spine, the Blacklift Slasher, the White Blind, and of course his signature weapon that's on the current weapon banner, the Red Horn Slasher, I believe. And of course, that one's going to be the best in slot for him. It is tailor-made for him. However, you'll be happy to know that these 4-star options are right up there with it. They are all very strong, namely the Serpent Spine and the White Blind. These are both very strong options. The Serpent Spine does beat out the White Blind a little bit in terms of damage, and that's mostly because of the passive here is just so darn strong, and you also get some nice crit rate, which bumps up your consistency, which is why I'll be using it for this video. But do know that the White Blind, especially at higher refinements, is amazing for Itto, and about just as strong as the Serpent Spine. So this is still a fantastic option. So if you don't have the Serpent Spine or something, or maybe you're using it on another character, don't be afraid to put on the White Blind because it is an excellent option. And then we also have the Blacklift Slasher, and this isn't a bad option. It's just its passive isn't nearly as strong or anything, and it does fall off compared to the Serpent Spine and the White Blind. But if you do need that crit damage, then don't be afraid to go ahead and slap that on, as it's not going to be a bad option. I also wanted to note that a lot of these 4-stars are better than a lot of 5-star options. Things like the Wolf's Gravestone and the Unforged are not good on Itto. He has pretty low base attack, and then he has very high base defense, so big attack claymores like the Wolf's Gravestone or the Unforged actually get beat out by White Blind, just because White Blind will literally make your attack larger during your elemental burst, and you'll be doing more damage with White Blind. It's pretty crazy. So do keep that in mind. Same with like the Serpent Spine here, its passive is just that good, and because you don't really scale that well off of attack, it just ends up beating out the other ones. Also wanted to mention that the Luxurious Sea Lord isn't that great of a pick on Itto because it does not impact his damage during his elemental burst. It's not really like elemental burst damage, so you're not going to be getting the bonus from that. Plus, it's an attack percent weapon with a low base attack, and it's not going to be helping him out that much. All right, and before we get into the teams, we'll go ahead and briefly go over all of my Itto stats. I do have him at level 80 here. I do want to say that he is worth getting to 90 because he does get pretty high base defense, and that is going to make your defense just scale even harder. So getting him to 90 is pretty darn worth it. Not to mention that his Ascension passive bonus is crit rate, which is really good and can really bump up your consistency and make it to where you don't really need to run a crit rate weapon like I am right now or anything. Even without my crit rate weapon, I'm still at like 60%. And that is mostly due to the fact that his passive is that crit rate. It's giving a ton and is helping out a bunch. I have him at 1100 attack here and about 1800 defense. We've also got 86% crit rate, 158% crit damage. Definitely want to get those numbers up a little bit, but that's a pretty solid ratio for now. I have him at 121 energy recharge, and although I most of the time don't have too much of a problem getting his elemental burst off of cooldown, if I'm not playing super well, then it can be a problem. So I do want to get this up to 130 ideally, because that's going to be a lot more comfortable. And then his geo damage bonus is 46.6 from the goblet, which will increase from the husk set. And you'll be getting substantial increases from the husk set. We'll actually show that in just a moment. And then if you weren't paying attention before, we have his talents at 8, 6, and 8. All right, and with the husk set here, you'll see we have 2000 defense now and 70% geo damage bonus. So you can see the husk set is contributing pretty heftily, especially in the geo damage bonus department. That is going to be a huge part of it. The defense here is very nice, but it's not substantial because you're stacking so much defense already that you begin to get to the diminishing returns department, but there is nothing wrong with going full in defense and getting that defense number as high as you can to get that attack as high as you can whenever you use his elemental burst. As for teams and pairings for Itto, Goro is actually going to be a fantastic option for him because Goro just buffs geo damage as well as defense and stuff depending on how many geo party members you have. Goro does feel a little wonky to me at C0. I think he gets a lot better with some of his constellations, but regardless, he's still a pretty good pairing with Itto, especially because of the fact that Goro's elemental burst follows you around and Itto likes to move a lot, so then you're keeping your circle around at all times, which is very nice. And I do like that it can keep up with Itto, but I do want some more constellations of my Goro. I will have a Goro video coming out talking all about him and my thoughts on him in general, so if you want to see that, then be sure to stay tuned and subscribe. But other than that, of course, Itto is going to pair very well with any Geo character. Just for the Geo resonance, it's such a strong resonance. Albedo's an amazing character to be pairing with Itto, because although Itto doesn't have to be on the field all the time, he can be on the field for a good duration, especially when you're going ham with his elemental burst. So having a character like Albedo on the team to where you can just leave his E-skill and forget is very, very nice, because then it's just one less character you really have to worry about swapping to, you know, make sure your rotation's optimal. And not to mention he's going to be providing some solid energy for Itto. Same with like GeoMC. GeoMC's a pretty good option just because he can provide some energy to Itto here. Noelle isn't a bad option for Itto. The problem is they just kind of want the same artifacts and weapons, so that's really going to be depending on you and if you just have the abundance of resources for that. But otherwise, they're actually not a bad pairing, because when Itto's off and doesn't have his elemental burst, you could just go with Noelle's elemental burst, heal everybody up and all that stuff, and they can just kind of swap out interchangeably, which is pretty cool. But as I said, they want the same stuff, so they can be pretty hard to pair. Ningguang, as I mentioned in a previous video, is going to be a fantastic option because she does generate a bunch of geoparticles, and you can just funnel those into Itto properly. But then, of course, buffers like Bennett are going to be amazing, as always. And although Bennett doesn't do a ton for Itto, because Bennett's a attack buffer, he still does buff him quite a bit, and you can really make Ushi go off with the Bennett circle. I've hit like 80k Ushis. It's pretty insane. Ushi does a ton of damage, but having a battery like the Raiden Shogun or even Electro MC is also going to be a fantastic option, just to make sure that you're getting your Itto that elemental burst uptime as much as you can, because otherwise you're going to be waiting around. But alternatively, if you don't have like a good battery character or something, you could easily just run another DPS. Somebody like Tartaglia is going to be a fantastic sub DPS, and a pairing like this actually isn't too bad, to where you go ham with your Geo team, you buff with like Bennett and stuff, and then maybe you're on cooldown with Itto, you can just swap to Tartaglia, pop off for a bit, and then when you're done with that, you can go back to Itto, etc. Tartaglia also generates some really good particles, so that can help your Itto's energy generation, so that's also an option. You can build around Itto to have like the 3 Geo team, especially with the Goro buff here, and then you don't have to worry about swapping to your characters as much, and that's seemingly how they want you to play him. But if you only want to do like a dual Geo type situation, you could easily just do healer, sub DPS, you know, main DPS Itto, and then some sort of support to help all of that out. Alternatively, you could just have a bunch of characters that don't need to be on the field to do their damage. You have people like Xingqiu Official, even Xiangling here if you really wanted to, and just focus having Itto on the field and they're doing all their damage off the field. That is always an option as well. And alternatively, like if you wanted to really go with that and you still wanted to keep the Geo Resonance, as I said before, Albedo would be a great option for that. But having somebody like Xingqiu here is really good because they can, you know, attack. You can still attack with your autos and get the Hydro application going, and then you can get Official to do some Electro Charge stuff and deal her damage off the field. And then Goro here actually has a pretty neat aspect to his Elemental Burst where he pulls in the Crystallized Shards, and if you have him on the 4-piece Archaic Petra, then you could buff one of the elements of these two and, you know, pop off with a bunch of damage like that, giving a 35% elemental damage bonus. So if you are using Goro, then something like an Electro Charge team is actually a pretty good consideration because it'll just be buffing your passive damage, especially if they're characters that like to be off of the field like this. So that's a pretty solid option as well. But really, the teams are flexible, but you are going to want to be thinking about Itto is going to want to be on the field for a considerable amount of time and how you can accent that the best. All right, we're on floor 12, chamber 1, second half here with a full Geo team because I thought it just might be fun. And we can go ahead and show off Arataki Itto here, as well as, you know, just some of the Geo supports he goes with. I figured that might be pretty fun to see how much damage we could actually get him doing. And as you can see, he's very, very effective, even late game Abyss here. And he has no problem throwing a 50k Ushi. And mind you, this Ushi is still level 6. That talent still isn't leveled up. So yeah, he's definitely a very strong character. And when you run him with enough Geo characters like this, you aren't going to have any like energy issues at all. And we're not even playing super optimally. You notice I didn't even get the Goro burst here. And as you can see, he still does plenty of damage. So yeah, Arataki Itto is very simple, very strong, and very fun. He's an absolute blast of a character, and I'm having a great time with him. Let me know how you guys are building your Arataki Ittos, if it's any different at all, what teams you might be using with him, and if I helped you out at all in this video. But other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Thanks for coming and watching. My name is Blossums, and I'll catch you later. Peace.